Assalamu alaikum friends. Today our topic is the gift and the English of Enrich. Gabriel. So we will introduce this poem to you, the summary of this poem. So let's take a start. Some poetry is like a staircase of gold. The reader can plant his feet firmly on each beautiful, priceless step as it carries him higher. Other poetry is like butterfly, brightly beautiful. The reader can enjoy following the path of its flight, but the butterfly is always elusive. Just at the moment when the reader thinks he has within his grasp, it splits up in another direction, higher and out of reach for the most part. The poetry of Adrienne Rich is like a whole intellectual field of butterflies darting here and there, enriching the mind and the senses, expanding the soul. In her poem Gabriel, Rich lover its portal between two worlds, her early poetry, and she is trying to find her own voice among the many she admires, and tries to emulate in her later feminist poetry, in which the voice she has found is darkly disturbed and angry. Her own life reflects the struggle between her earlier concern with the past, the cable rejects inexorably gone, with a present which threatened a deadly isolation. Early 40 of Adrienne Rich by Marquis Slovic. This poem shows how she is torn between these worlds, afraid to go forward and afraid to go back, hanging onto the both worlds as long as she can. And Gabriel, rich insecurity and confusion are evident in the first two lines. There are no angels yet. Here comes an angel. Who is the angel? Can Rich be speaking of her muse, her voice? But the poet is a woman and the angel is one with a man face young, shut of the dark side of the moon, turning to me and saying, I am the plumed serpent, the beast with the fangs of fire and gentle heart. An angel chiding a snapshot of daughter-in-law critique clearly keys calls the choice of imagery Adrienne Rich obsessions with demons. She goes on to say that demons may also be angels. In a sense, these demons take over a woman caught between expressing her creative energies and remain in her traditional role as woman. No compromise seems possible. But for the feminist poet Adrienne Rich gave angels, demon a masculine gender seems antithetical. Keys explain it this way because the poet Pierre reprisal she writes other poems and she maintains an identification with men, either in adopting the male persona taking on a male attitude or imitating male foods, primarily yeast. The critics go on to say that the rich is possessed by another demon, the spectre of male approval. In the second one's Rich vacillates again by saying the angel demon does speak at all. His message drenches his body. He had warned to kill me for using words to name him. This work focused on the rich obsessions with the inadvocacy of language is a form of communication in her poem, I Am in Danger, sir, in which she sees the air buzzing with spoiled language, and like this together, in which she says our word misunderstood, rich struggle with language sees keys every word and phrase essential in her quest to find the language that holds the key to transforming power, the aesthetic of power, the poetry of a dream rich by Claire Keys. The poet also blamed language for the inability to communicate, which destroys the relationship between men and women. Only poetry of Adrienne Rich merely stoic. And the forewords, her sense of alienation from all that is safely known and familiar is voiced in the word. It sits in the bare apartment reading, but even reading no longer brings her comfort. Something is wrong. What steam past me poetry? 20th century rivers, disturbed surfaces, reflecting clouds, reflecting wrinkled neon, but clogged and mostly nothing alive left in their depths. This is a scathing indictment of male-dominant modern poetry is decided about based from those days, which Rich's earliest mentor were men keys. When Rich wrote at a Bach a concert around 1950, she mounted the universal male poet attitude that a too compassionate art is a cell. Sorry, art is a hope in art. Adrienne Rich, the poet, and her critics by Craig Warner, drawing praise from W. H. Warner for her capacity of detachment of self and its emotion, reading and reading. Reviews and Revision, 1951 to 1981, by Jane Coffer. But Warner said that as she came to feel that regard for the word differ from that of the male poet, Rich refuted the detached ironies and polished performance which had come to dominate academic modernism. Rich started quoting this on her poem in mid-1950 because she wanted her reader to understand that she was engaged in a long, continuing crossing Warner. This was time that when she was rejecting the dominant critical idea, the poem text would be read as separate from the poet's early everyday life Warner. The angel who perhaps represents her Aryan mentors is now barely speaking to her. Once in a horn of light, he stood or someone like him, salutations and gold leaf, rebelling from the lakes. Rich could be speaking here of a time when everything seemed so clear and her mentor, especially Arden, were singing her praise. Today again the hair streams to his shoulders, the eyes reflect something like a lost country, so I think. The imagination is quick embrace the vision of a tracker fort with hair streaming to his shoulder. The angel poet, however, shows something of confusion or disapproval in his eyes, but Rich is not sure. She betrays her own confusion once again. But the ribbon has reeled itself up, isn't having giving her taking any shit. We glance miserably across the room, each other. Once again, the male and female are not communicating. Each refuses the other value. Rich can no longer accept the old boy masculine ideas that cling tightly to the status quo, especially where women are concerned. And the male angel's poet refuses to be intimidated by Rich, a woman who is no longer content with the boundaries of passivity, submission, and masochism. Still, Rich doubts and fears about the venture into unknown near the Medusa head again. It's true there are moments closer and closer together when the word sticks in my throat, the art of love, the art of words. And the closing words, Rich acknowledges Gabriel, unspoken message, the message that he disapproves. But Rich cannot let go of his approval but has friendship altogether. Just will you stay looking straight at me a while longer, she says. But like butterfly, this poem has a heart to pin down rather than grasping it. One might only captivate his mind for a few moments before letting it dart off in another direction. Such a direction might be toward other angel identities. Her Jewish father, a doctor who greatly influenced her intellectual development keys, and whom she says had been for me such as ambiguous figure, so tremendously rewarding on the hand, and such obstacle whose daughter was raised is a son, taught to study but not to pray, taught to hold reading and writing sacred keys, and there is also her husband, to whom was written like to this written, and whom committed suicide in 1970, and subject about she refuses to write it poetically otherwise, though some critics see might have alluded to metaphorically in a couple of her poems. This one thing is concerned certain English in this poem, even the unorthodox spacings of the words, a style she uses in several poems, and the lack punctuation boundaries seems to indicate these could be used to show her overpowering emotions. Words stick in my throat, how she gropes by the right word. In this poem, if the reader had looked through as Adrienne was sounding these words, he might have seen her deep, wrenching sobs between these words. Adrienne weeping for past that had brought her mere happiness that expressed her fear of an uncertain future. Thank you, Knowledge TV.